Hey friends, welcome back to She's At It Again. My name's Tanya, and Lacey and Zoe and I are going to show you how to get your chicken ready to make some chicken and dressing and chicken and dumplings. You're going to need the stock or the broth from this whole chicken to be able to use the liquid for your dumplings to cook in and for the liquid to put in your chicken and dressing to make that. So we just went to the supermarket. We got our chicken. I've got it kind of rinsed off a little bit. I know they say don't rinse chicken, but that's because they're afraid you're going to splash all the chicken gooky stuff around your sink. But trust me, my sink's going to get clean. So I've even taken the heart, the gizzard, and the liver, put those in there because once they cook, I'll put that in my dog's food. They'll think that's a huge treat for them. So the first thing we're going to do, we just have our whole chicken in our slow cooker. I'm going to add water to it. I want as much water as I can get in there. And I'll probably add a little bit more to it later on, but for now we'll start with that. It's probably got a big bubble on the inside of the cavity of the chicken that's going to go bloop bloop once I put the lid on it. I'm going to put just a little cap full of cider vinegar in that. That's going to draw the minerals out of the bones in that. And you're not going to have a vinegary flavor, so don't be concerned about that. So again, this is just apple cider vinegar. And I made a new handle for my slow cooker. I'm so proud of myself because I just went to our local big hardware store and got an eye bolt and an acorn nut and 2 rubber gaskets, and I think I'm set. I had a wooden knob, just went and bought a wooden cabinet knob a few years ago and was using that, but the wood cracked on it because of the moisture that kept coming up through the lid. So I'm hoping this works. I know it's going to be hot. That was one of the drawbacks to using metal, but this is a Durasteel knob, and again, it's going to be hot, but I'll just use a hot pad when I pick it up, or an oven mitt. All right, so I'm going to take this out in the center. Even though it's cooler weather now, it would be advantageous to leave it in the house. I just really don't want my house smelling like chicken. Although it smells good when you're hungry, it's not good when you're trying to go to sleep at night, and that's exactly what's going to happen if I cook it in the house. So we're going to cook this low and slow out in the sunroom, and I'll probably turn it on low and even let it go into the night, and then we'll debone this tomorrow, but I'll try to remember to turn the camera back on when we start deboning it. That's the whole purpose of it, so you can see the whole process. So thanks for joining us, and this is just the first step of a few to where we get to our chicken and dressing and chicken and dumplings. See you in a bit. Okay, we're back. This is the very next day, and our chicken has been cooked. Let's see, I started close to noon. Well, yeah, close to noon yesterday. It cooked on low in the slow cooker all afternoon, all evening, all night last night, and I got up this morning when I woke up and went out in the sunroom, turned the slow cooker off, so it's cooled down just a little bit. It's still pretty hot. So I'm going to put the chicken in this metal colander, and it'll drip the juices down in there, which I'll save as well. Save the chicken. I'll take all the broth that this has made, the bone broth, well, not bone broth, this is chicken stock now. I'll put it in a glass container. I have a half-gallon glass jar over there to put whatever I can fit in there, and then add more jars as we need. Then I'll put the bones back in here, start cooking it again, just like we did when we made bone broth in the video about bone broth. So continuing on, we're just getting our chicken broth and our meat ready to put in the chicken and dressing and the chicken and dumplings. Okay, carry on. Okay, so real quick, I wanted to show you what this looks like. This is our half-gallon jar, and this is the fat layer on the top right there. This being just a quart jar, and we have about half of it. It still has a layer of fat on it, so that's some good-looking chicken broth right there. So this is the first batch, will be our liquid that we use for our dumplings. Now the dressing needs to be seasoned with the chicken broth, but we don't need quite as much fat. It's not necessary because there's going to be fat in the cornbread and the biscuits and the bread and stuff. So anyway, just wanted to get you to take a look at that so you'll know what we're talking about. So that made about 6 cups. No, I'm sorry, not 6 cups. Let's see, 6, 7. That's 7 to the top, so that's about 8. So that's about 10 cups of chicken broth right there. That's just from that one chicken. Now we're going to put the bones, we're going to debone the chicken, put the bones back in our slow cooker right here. This is where I've been straining that. And then we'll continue forward with our process. The day before Thanksgiving. And the reason I'm videoing this is because hopefully we'll release this video sometime between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so you will have a recipe for chicken and dressing by Christmas time. So let's get started. We have all of our stuff ready, and I want to show you this part because some people are intimidated by the fact that you just use random cornbread, bread, biscuits, whatever, because they think they're going to mess it up. You're not going to mess it up. Trust me on this one. Unless you just can't make cornbread or biscuits, you're probably not going to mess it up. So this is leftover cornbread from a function here a while back that I catered, and I just took the leftovers home because nobody else needed it, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to make dressing before too long, and that's what it takes. So this is just this is sweet cornbread dressing. Now this has quite a bit of honey in it because people tend to like sweet cornbread at functions like that, like the one I catered. But you do not have to use sweetened cornbread. This is sweetened with honey, but you might have sweetened with sugar, whatever you use. I actually like the dressing made with cornbread that's sweet, but some people just don't. Now my family, if you put this in front of my family, if my grandparents were still alive, they'd be like, why is this a dessert? Because it is definitely sweeter than what my grandmother made it. But Nana was the queen of chicken and dressing and chicken and dumplings. So we try to get things as close to what it tasted like when Nana made it. That's just kind of your goal to achieve things. Because she was the epitome of a great cook. Had no clue about most recipes. She just intuitively knew what to put together and it would taste right. So what I'm doing right here is just crumbling this up. Once I put the liquid in it, it's all going to kind of break up anyway, but it just kind of makes me be able to, or helps me be able to see what ratio of things I have in here. So I want more cornbread than I do anything else, but I still want a good mixture of biscuits and breadcrumbs and rolls and things like that, things that I've saved in the refrigerator. I have some little ends to, I think some French bread I made. I don't remember what I served with it, but I cut the ends off. I was probably making some little grown-up grilled cheese with the slices, and then the ends, because they're rounded, you can't really grill those on a flat griddle and they get the consistency you want, so I'm sure that's why I stuck them aside. So I'm just hoping my bowl is big enough. I put it in this bowl thinking it was going to be, and then I'm looking at it going, maybe I guessed wrong, I don't know. We can always dump in another one. So here's the ends to the French bread that I made. And you just tear it up into pieces. Now this is Southern chicken and dressing, and if you're thinking, why does she keep saying dressin and not dressing? Because when you're from the South, You don't have a G in that word. It's just Dressin. And don't ask me why, but that's just how it's always been. I was raised in central eastern Arkansas. My grandparents had about 3,600 acres when I was a kid, from what I was told. And they farmed, and my granddad was a hard-working farmer. But he was also rewarded significantly because he had beautiful crops, and people in that area admired him. They loved him. He was just a good person. If you knew him, you were a better person for it. And my Nana was a housemaker, and she sewed and she gardened and she just did all kinds of things, and she kept us as kids pretty much every weekend, every holiday, and every summer. We didn't even know what our own house looked like in the summertime because we were always at their house. And we didn't know any different but what everybody lived like that. And looking back, I'm glad we didn't have it any other way, but given an option as a kid, you'd have probably said, oh no, I want to stay home and be with my friends and pull some shenanigans in the neighborhood. And I'm glad we were not allowed to do that. We were out in the country and there were no kids around us. There was no anything around us. You either went fishing in the pond, or you went fishing at the lake, or you went out and shot turtles off the edge of the bayou, or you just played with the cats outside or the dogs or whatever. That was the fun. And this was back in the 60s, so if that gives you an idea of what country life was like back then, I think that's a pretty accurate picture. Okay, that's the ends of my French bread. This is some cubes of sourdough that I probably saved to make a bread pudding with, but just never did, and that's okay. They've been in the freezer taking up space. So we're going to put, we'll put some of those in there. I'm trying to eyeball my pan over there and see how big it is. I still want to leave room for my biscuits, so these are some honey rolls made into crescent rolls that I made. And we'll use a few of those. I can tell you right now I need a bigger bowl, so I'm just going to get the bigger bowl. This is easy enough. Problem solved. I'd much rather have a bowl that's too big than a bowl that's too small and try to mix a lot of things in. That would be annoying. And again, you don't have to just tear them up into minuscule pieces. It's just a matter of getting them torn up so they can mix in with the other ingredients. Now you're going to probably laugh to yourself or think I'm a nut when you see this pan of biscuits, but I made biscuits last night, and we had breakfast for dinner last night because I knew I'd need biscuits for this, and I didn't have any already in the freezer. But this is my pan of biscuits. We had 2 each last night, then my husband got up and had one this morning before he went to the gym. But when he told me later on, I had a biscuit and a banana before I went to the gym, I said, oh, do not eat my biscuits because those are for the dressing. Like I'm going to use all those. But trust me, these won't go to waste. These freeze beautifully. If you, we will put the link to the buttermilk biscuit in the description, or put it on the screen somewhere. I'll say it's up here in this corner, and I always tell my husband, I can't do that because I don't remember which corner it is, so I'm just going to guess. We'll say it's going to be right up here in the corner, and click on that if you're interested in the recipe for buttermilk biscuits. And trust me, these will be your favorite, and you will not make them any other way unless you're just incapacitated and can't figure it out. But these never ever go to waste because whatever is left over I can put in the refrigerator, and we usually eat them pretty quick. But if there happens to be a time when there's more left over than what we can eat from the refrigerator, then I put them in the freezer and they reheat beautifully. Zoe's down there talking to me from beside me. I have no idea what she wants. Okay, I wish I could give you measurements of all this stuff, but I just can't. You're probably, if you're just making for your family, you're likely not going to make this amount, but I'm just saying eyeball it. But you're going to be putting about 3/4 cornbread to about 1/4 everything else. And when I say everything else, I mean just every other kind of bread that's not cornmeal based. All right, put these back in the lower oven. And I'll give my hands a rinse. All right, the next thing we add to our bread mixture, I'm going to take my spoon and mix this around, or my spatula and mix this around, just so we can get a good look at everything mixed together. When I was a kid, I was just not crazy about dressing. I ate it because that's just kind of the rule. Chicken and dressing, chicken and dumplings, you just put it on your plate. If it's a holiday, this is something you need to eat. I never questioned it. Never did. That's just what you ate. That's what was there, and that's what you ate. Now, never mind, there were probably 20 or 30 different sides, appetizers, breads, all kinds of things to go with this, but this is the main dish. We didn't have the pretty turkey with all the pretty things around it that you don't even eat. We had a big rustic pan of chicken and dressing and a big rustic pot of chicken and dumplings. And you had to have some cranberry sauce on the side, the jellied kind, not the whole cranberries, but the jellied kind. But this was not my favorite thing. But as an adult, it's kind of turned into my favorite thing. And I don't know how that happened. And it couldn't be that mine's any better than Nana's, because literally that's a physical impossibility. But I just really, really like this. But again, this is true Southern food. And if you're from someplace that's not familiar with Southern food, it may not be understandable to you. All right, these are the things we're going to add to this. I'm going to add about a tablespoon, oh no, a heaping tablespoon I'd say. Nah, maybe more than that. Maybe a tablespoon and a half of ground sage. And then we're going to add some black pepper. To this much bread, I'd say add about 3/4 of a teaspoon of black pepper. We're going to add salt, and because everything else has salt in it, you don't need as much, but you still need at least a teaspoon of salt, I'd say. You can always add some later on, but you can't take it out once it's in there. But you probably knew I was going to say that. All right, in here I have about 1.5 cups of chopped celery and about 3 fresh whole mushrooms. Now this is just organic celery, organic mushrooms. And then in my chopper container, I'm going to show you what this looks like. And this is what the top of it looks like. It's got those blades and they're super sharp. So I'll take the lid off that. And this says it's about 2 cups of onions. So basically, onions, celery, salt, pepper, and sage, and mushrooms. And my Nana did not add mushrooms to hers. We never bought mushrooms at Nana's house. Don't ask me why. Just one of those things. Some things you just don't grow up having. We didn't do a lot of salad when I was a kid, and we never, ever did mushrooms. I had no idea what they tasted like until I was much older. But Had she known how good they were in this, I promise you she would have put them in there. We're going to stir this up again. Now, I'm not going to cook this dressing today, but I'm rather going to get it all mixed together. I'll put it in a pan and then I'll bake it before we go where we're going to join friends tomorrow for our Thanksgiving dinner. And it is perfectly okay to do that. You can put it in a ceramic dish, or I have actually a commercial stainless steel pan I'm going to put mine in that has a lid that will fit tightly on there. I'll probably put some parchment underneath the lid, but putting stuff in stainless is totally fine. You just do not want to put this in an aluminum pan and then put your high acid foods in there, because it will tend to leach the aluminum into your food. Not something you want to do. But glass pan, ceramic pan, stainless steel pan, that is totally fine. All right, so I've been heating up my chicken bone broth on the stove over here, and it's not hot, it's just barely warm. But for some reason, warm liquids just tend to soak into stuff better than cold liquids do. So here's my pot of chicken stock, or bone broth. And I don't want to over wet it, so I'll add some and then stir it and then see if I need more. You know, I said a while ago I'll go out and get my chicken, but I can always do that tomorrow before I bake it, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. We'll get all this done in one step here. So the broth starts soaking into the bread, and the bread kind of gets mushy, and that's totally fine. That's just how it works. The hard pieces of the sourdough are the ones I really want it to soak into, because they were, again, pretty hard. But that's a bread that doesn't have any oil in it at all, so I'm not surprised that they were that hard. And my sourdough is not a sweet sourdough like some people's are. They'll feed it with sugar. I don't have any sugar in mine whatsoever. And I do hope to do a tutorial on sourdough, maybe after the first of the year. I don't know, at some point. But I want to start out by showing you how to make the starter just from flour and water. I don't want to start out with a video on here's my starter, because you're going, wait a minute, I don't have that. There's few things more irritating than somebody showing you a recipe and it looks so great, but it's ingredients that you have no way of obtaining. Okay, so we want our mixture wetter than this, but we also still have to add our eggs to it. Our egg mixture is going to hold this together. It's going to be a good binder. So I want to put my eggs in this first, and then we'll add the rest of our liquid, because the eggs will still add a little bit of moisture to it. And I'm going to guess at about, I'm going to go with about 4 or 5 eggs in that, I think. We'll go with 5 and see how that looks. I got to be honest, I'm very excited about sharing this recipe with you, because I have too many friends out there that said my grandmother made the best chicken and dressing, but she died and we don't have her recipe written down anywhere and nobody knows how to make it. I'm telling you, this is your recipe, and make it. Just make it and see if this tastes like what your grandmother made. because it tastes like what my Nana made. All right, gonna add a little bit more liquid to this. I can always put this liquid back into the canning jars that I had it in to put in the refrigerator and use it for other things. Not gonna hurt it at all. Okay, this will sit in the refrigerator overnight, and those sourdough bread cubes, which are getting a little bit softer, they'll soften up a lot. And then tomorrow, right before I place it in the oven, maybe I'll turn the cameras back on and we'll just continue on with that part. We'll put that chicken on the top. I already have my chicken cooked and deboned, and I'll just take the pieces and kind of poke them down into the mixture in the pan. We'll bake it like that, and this will bake for probably an hour or more. So, and again, it just depends on the size of your container, how deep it is compared to what a flat pan would bake, because a larger flat pan that's shallow is going to bake a lot quicker than a pan that is smaller and deeper. Just have more surface area there. All right, let's get our pan over here. And this pan has no coating to it as far as, I'm not putting butter or coconut oil in it, because the chicken stock in this will have enough oil in it, and some of the bread has enough butter in it to where it'll be fine. All right, I'm gonna try to pour this where you can see it. I'll put my spatula there so it won't splash as much. I do have to tell you this funny story. Growing up, I had, my grandparents had 3 kids. My mother was the oldest, my Aunt Frida being the next, and then my Uncle Randy was the youngest. And when all the kids came home for Thanksgiving and the grandkids were there, and eventually the great-grandkids, my mother and my Aunt Frida would make their way to the kitchen to sample the dressing before it even got cooked. And at this point I'm thinking, what in the world? It's got raw eggs in it. They did not care, I'm telling you. And they said they tasted it before the eggs went in, but I don't know if that's the truth or not. It may just be a story they're making up. But the fun came when you take the dressing out of the oven, and my mother and my Aunt Frida would make a beeline for that kitchen because they wanted the corner piece of the dressing. So growing up, it's a wonder I even thought dressing baked in a square pan that had corners to it, because we'd get to the table. By the time we made it to the table, nearly every corner had just a chunk missing out of it, because they wanted that crispy corner that was more cooked than anything else in there. It was like the favorite part for everybody, but they would race in there to get it. And my mother, being the shenanigan puller that she was, she would normally get the piece before my Aunt Frida would, because my Aunt Frida was just so sweet, she'd probably let her have it. All right, so here is what our dressing looks like. This is about as runny as it's supposed to be. I don't really know the consistency to tell you, other than maybe like a pancake batter, perhaps. But it's gonna be chunky, just so you know. All right, so I am going to put the lid on this, and tomorrow we'll come back. I'll turn the cameras back on, and we will put our chicken in this, bake this off, and then I'll show you a final product before we take it to where we're going tomorrow. But for now, I appreciate you watching. I'm hoping you're having a good holiday, but more than that, I'm hoping that this serves a good purpose for you. So anyway, be back on in just a minute, which will be tomorrow for us, and we'll show you the rest of the recipe for chicken and dressing. So see you in a bit. Okay, so we're back. This is the next day. This is actually Thanksgiving Day, so we're getting ready to put our dressing in the oven. It's not going to be ready for probably a couple hours, but it's totally fine for it to sit in the oven after it gets cooked and stay warm until our gathering. We're gathering at 3 o'clock this afternoon, and right now it's almost 11 o'clock. So I just want to make sure it's completely done all the way through before I take it to where we're going. So this is our pan of dressing that we made yesterday, and I told you we'd put our chicken in it later on. I put it out in the fridge, so looks like it decided to be in the coldest part of the fridge, so it's kind of frozen now, just a little bit. All right, so I'm going to take pieces of chicken about like this, lay them on the top. We're just going to arrange them on the top. I'll put the biggest ones in here because I'm going to save the smaller pieces for our chicken and dumplings, which is in a pan on the stovetop right behind me. And I'm simultaneously making a video about that too, because, you know, you got to have chicken and dressing and chicken and dumplings all the same day. All right, this is actually a whole chicken that I've cooked, and this is what I wound up with. I want to say this says it's 7 cups on there. That may or may not be right, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. You'd think if I look at the bottom of those containers long enough, I'd figure it out. So this is obviously, since it's a whole chicken, it's light meat, white meat, and dark meat combined. I prefer the dark meat just because I just think it has more flavor. My mother was one of those people who would buy a whole chicken just to get the broth, and she would pick out the breast meat and literally throw the rest of it away. That goes against every cell of my being, but you know, that's just what makes people different. But I prefer thigh meat, leg meat, stuff like that. I'm not opposed to eating white meat, but I just think the other has more flavor to it. Okay, so if you don't understand why I'm putting this on the top, I'm actually going to poke it in, but I just need to know where it is first. I want to make sure there's enough to where if somebody intends on getting a piece of chicken, they're not going to dig into it and go, hey, there's not even any chicken in this. Not that anybody in this group that I'm going to today would say that, but I don't even want them to think it. I want everybody to get a piece of chicken if they want a piece of chicken. So we're putting it on the top so I can just know where it is before I poke it in. All right, so this is where we are. So this is where we take just our fingers, just poke it in there until it's all covered up. Because the chicken's already cooked, I'm more concerned about the dressing being cooked all the way through. So poke it in, poke it in, poke it in. Kind of cover it up with the dressing with your fingers. So it looks like there's no chicken in there at first glance, but it's because it's hidden like a treasure. Okay, that took more time than I thought it would. Okay, so this is our chicken and dressing. I'm gonna put this in the oven. We'll put our oven at about 350, 375, and just let it cook for maybe an hour or so. Just check it at that point. It'll probably wind up cooking closer to 2 hours, but only because my pan is not as wide as it is deep, and you don't have as much surface area. So we'll be back when it's done. I'll show you what it looks like, and gotta go wash my hands now. Okay, I want y'all to see what this looks like. This has been cooking for about an hour and a half. And so I've turned my oven off, and we're just gonna let it stay in there until time to go to our friend's house to eat lunch. So that is our chicken and dressing. And now you know how to make chicken and dressing. There's no excuse. So be saving your biscuits, be saving your leftover bread, stick it in the freezer, be saving your leftover cornbread of all things. You can save that year round. And at the time you want to make your chicken and dressing, just pull it all out, let it thaw, crumble it up, and follow the recipe and the directions that we gave you earlier. Thanks for joining us, friends. And as always, we appreciate your time and attention in these things. I feel like these recipes are very important. But we hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to sharing something again with you real soon. Thanks. Bye.
I'm thankful for terse daughters that
Keep it real. Keep it real.
I'm thankful for that Katie and Andrew live in Arkansas, and they have great neighbors and a church that they're a part of that